Happy Halloween. I'm going live today for the live money activation to show you what I've psychically and intuitively tracked at every income level. Now, each time when you're upgrading your lifestyle, right, calling in a higher level of financial abundance, there's a predictable test from the universe, right, that you need to pass in order to get through to the next threshold. They always say new level, new devil. But there's also very predictable and specific subconscious programming, soul cords, soul contracts, even like family line stories, right? Money stories, success stories, hardship stories that make predictable quantum leaps in income very easy and less of a, this is so uncertain for me, I don't know what to do. I'm a shiny unicorn with very specific problems, but it makes it much more human. So today I'm going to be covering what I've tracked as an intuitive, right, from the people that I've served at every single threshold of income, from 0 to 5K, from 5 to 10, from 10 to 25K a month, from 25 to 50K, and then from 50K to 100K, 100K plus. Beyond that stage, we're not going to cover because it's probably just not relevant for the majority of people. If that is, and if that's you, reach out and we can always have a quick chat about those specific milestones. So hi, I'm Melissa. I'm a destiny and success mentor for top leaders and for people with big missions, big visions, right? Big hearts who are looking to hit their next level of success, make a bigger impact, call in more income, raise their standard of tolerance, and create a life by design that is truly worth living. I've been doing this work now professionally for about 5 years. And I have seen everything, right? Everything that people's souls show me in deep healing session, as well as with the intuitive coaching, what thermostat issues, what predictable glass ceilings, what predictable blocks, loops, right, cycles happen that cause people to take themselves out right before their next breakthrough, or that keep people stuck playing at a level that is way smaller than they're actually able to hold. So the fastest way, if you're looking to boost your business, right, grow your income, step away from a 9-to-5 into your calling, and to also actually get in front of more people who you can help, get paid abundantly so that you are well compensated, well remunerated for your gifts, your talents, your skills, and your expertise, your zone of genius, is to first look at the 95% of subconscious blocks, right, that exist beyond or be under the surface, the things that we're not usually aware of, but that do play themselves out in predictable cycles, patterns, or setbacks that usually happen either in a cyclical fashion, right? Feast and famine can be traced back to ancestral lives, right? There's a lot of farmers that lived in prior generations. So a lot of times when people are going to feast and famine, it can be traced back to ancestral wounding, right? Epigenetic programming around having a great harvest one season, around having droughts, right? Or frosted crops and things not actually being able to be sowed. Or it can be traced to times where our subconscious thermostat of how good we allow our lives to get, how rich, how abundant, how wealthy, how well, how happy we allow ourselves to be before the subconscious says, hey, whoa, that's a little too good. That's a little too fast. That's beyond what I am comfortable receiving, because up until now, I've made it my identity and I've created a story that it is familiar for me to exist within reason, right? Within what I tolerate. And again, the universe doesn't give us what we want, what we're manifesting. The universe gives us who we are being, what we are tolerating, what we're saying yes to. So if we want to go there faster, we need to look at the 95% of subconscious beliefs, the programming, hey, Connie, how's it going, that tell us what is available to us, to tell us what we're worthy of, or that hold us back from taking the actions we know might be good for us. And through this work, it becomes a lot clearer, a lot faster. So let's dive in. This is Hack the Money Matrix. So each level of the game is going to ask you to upgrade your identity, to leave certain parts of you behind, right? In order to call in what we want, the law of subtraction needs to come into effect. And this is a universal law that states we can only carry so much on our plate, right? If you imagine this like waitress carrying these stacks of pancakes, at some point, you can't hold any more pancakes, right? You can't hold more weight, more pressure, more responsibilities, or you can't add more things to you without removing stuff. There's only 24 hours in the day. We all live the same 24 hours. So the fastest way to accelerate your success, right, and to focus on that 10x timeline, that 10x vision, your peak potential, is to first ask the question, what do I need to remove, right? What have I been playing into that one can't come with me for this next leg of the game, or that is draining my energy, derailing me, distracting me, and taking away from my focus, my ambition, or even just the resources that could go towards people that actually get it, people that I actually want to work with, right? Or things I'd actually love to be spending my time and energy on. So let's go in. So stage one is survival. Survival is for the thresholds. And again, none of these are right or wrong. This is literally just a theme that is associated with each income level. The survival level is 0 to 5K a month, right? And that is what most Americans and Canadians live on. Now, this threshold is asking you to get stable and grounded with money. So if money feels fleeting, it feels unsafe, it feels stressful, the predictable threshold in the test here is actually, how can you create safety? How can you feel safe making more money on your home? How can you feel safe being a pillar, right? Allowing yourself to be provided for without clinging to systems that we'll talk about. But also, how can you now normalize feeling like you have enough to go around each and every month, right? So the things that we see a lot at the 0 to 5 threshold are survival mode contracts. A lot of the time there's like war, hardship, right? Feast and famine, poverty contracts on a soul level to your lineage. Your mother line, your father line may have gone through some darker moments in history, right? And that needs to be reconciled to slingshot you forward and to also do your ancestors a favor so that it's no longer tying your family down. There's also a lot of times cords and contracts. So energy cords are things that bind you to other people, right? It holds in place a story. A lot of times we have cords that are good, right? Somebody might make us feel loved. Somebody might make us feel good. Every time we walk down the hall and we see our favorite coworker, Joey, and we give him a high five, there's a bond, right? It holds in place like a story or an association. But there's also cords that aren't good for us, right? Cords that drain our energy vampires, people that bring you down, or feelings of obligation, responsibility to something that you'd rather say no to. A lot of the times at the 0 to 5 level, we see cords and contracts to government systems, right? Things like disability grids, when you go on like EI or employment insurance, right? If you're laid off, dismissed from your job, and you have to fall back on that, sometimes there can be energetic cords that I see that actually hold in place this need for the system in order to feel like you have enough, or in order to get ahead, or in order to like have your foundational survival needs met. And those can be really tricky because a lot of the times people get stuck because they're scared of letting go of those things, because outgrowing and exceeding your income would mean that you lose that benefit, right? And of course, our mind is wired to hold that in place. So if we lose the benefit, falls away, it feels scary, it feels safe. And that's why you see a lot of well-meaning people get stuck on these things. Again, there's nothing right or wrong. This is just a sort of bird's eye view on it. So we need to let go of the fallback plans. And when I was up leveling, when I was first in my era of like single parenting, right, going through a lot of those abundance blocks, there was things like renter benefits for like government housing benefits, where I got like a couple $100 from the government each month to supplement my rent, a portable housing benefit. That was scary to let go of, because I was like, oh my gosh, if I let go of this, then that means that money's going to need to come from somewhere. But it was one of the best things I did, was to let go and to like manifest and expect, right? And to reprogram myself to assume and create the money coming in from different ways. I also saw that at things like the dentist office, right? If you're qualified maybe for like Medicaid, or in Ontario, we have ODSP, so that would be like a disability payment. They take care of your dental care. And I'll never forget the moment I was on disability at one point for chronic migraines and complex PTSD. And when I had let go of that, they had asked me to pay in full for my visit. Or sorry, they had given me the bill, and they said, don't worry, we're going to like bill it through to the equivalent of government system was paying for me. And I said, hey, look, this is going to sound really crazy, but I've been doing a lot of inner work, and I know that it's my time to let go of this. And to manifest more, I actually need to like drop the victim story a little bit and to let go of my safety net. So I'm going to pay for this. And I was really excited to pay for this. And they're like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah, please like erase all of that from my file. And I was excited because it felt so empowering to put down my cash and say, I know myself, and I've gotten to this level before, right, that I'm so willing to let go of those old safety nets to actually do it on my own, and zero regrets. So signs you're stuck here is anxiety paying for full and things, relying on support systems, government structures, or people that are not actually healthy and supportive, right? It's saying yes to underpaid offers, like accepting whatever comes your way, avoiding invoices, being afraid of looking at your finances, right? Resisting or procrastinating on the things that might actually be needed, like calling up your credit cards to renegotiate a rate, or doing the practical things that somebody in their healthy financial responsibility would be able to do with more neutrality. And the reason is because there's a lot of shame associated with these survival grids and programs, these subconscious programs, right? We are shamed by our parents, we are shamed by creditors, we are shamed when we're late on a payment. So a lot of the times it triggers people and brings up this sense of shame. And of course, the subconscious is designed to protect you. So it says, hey, let's not bother with that. Let's not look at that, because it's safer to avoid feeling this way. And I'd rather stay on it than, push through. And after a while, that gets normalized. So reprogramming is, I release also contracts here that are based on survival, scarcity, or false dependence on systems that don't serve me or people that don't serve me. Unhooking from scarcity grids, right? Low income grids, karmic cycles, feast and famine, war, displacement, robbing Peter to pay Paul, right? Things that say I'm never getting ahead. No matter what happens, there's always something to get me off course. Okay. And the test of the universe will usually be either a surprise bill. So how are you handling it? Are you handling it from the perspective of your future self saying, oh, that's weird, I didn't account for that. All right, well, what's required here to make the extra cash? Or are you going to go into a panic spiral saying, oh my God, this is another sign why I'm never going to break free from this, right? Are you reinforcing what you're letting go of, that same cycle of never actually getting ahead or arriving at your destination? Or are you willing to lean in and say, okay, this is a little bit scary, but I'm an infinite creator, so let's be creative and how can I make that happen? The other thing that might happen is a free support option. So again, in my moment, it was choosing my sovereignty over and valuing the $400 or $500 dental bill and valuing my sovereignty more than a $400 or $500 dental bill. So in other words, in that moment, I thought that my freedom, my sovereignty, my self-empowerment to say I'm no longer dependent on a disability support person, like a government support that I'd rather not be using or that I don't need anymore, than it would be to get another free dental visit. And in that moment, I had to trade that and choose that. And the financial investment was almost like my ticket into the next level. Okay. So declining lowballing offers, growing and looking at the finances, training your nervous system to actually look at your accounts, right? And to see the full financial picture, or to do one thing each month to clean it up, such as calling a creditor, calling your bank, seeing if we can negotiate something. And also turning down any free support options with time. Obviously, I'm not saying everyone has the means to, and this is a trauma-informed lens, right? My story may not be your story, and sometimes you actually may need the government help, so there's nothing to demonize it here. But what I'm saying is, if you are at the cusp where you're starting to get aware, this is really comfortable, but I don't actually need it anymore, then it's thanks so much that I had that support for one moment in time, let's move forward. All right. Stability into comfort. So this is the 5 to 10K a month level. Okay. So once you're becoming safe, you're no longer a anxious mess with your finances, right? You're no longer in feast and famine. You're no longer in fear and worry. Now comes the test of worthiness. And the threshold here is a little bit of overflow. So can you have more than enough without guilt? Are you demonizing having more than others? Right? Or what stories do you have running that tells you that it's not safe to have more than others? It's not right. There's some sort of moral or ethical conundrum. The test of the universe will often be asking you to hold boundaries for this next level. So a trusted friend comes in, wants a discount, right? A client tries to take way more than what was negotiated or the scope of the contract. And do you still believe you're worthy, right, of having, while also setting standards, saying, hey, I'm not available for that, or this is beyond what we had discussed. So here, what to reprogram is I'm worthy of being paid fully. I'm worthy and deserving, and it's actually safe and right and natural and good for me to have more than enough. And what you must release at this level are actually loyalty vows that bind you to stay either at your family's income level, your cultural level, right? What the good people stay modest kind of programming, or peer agreements to never outshine. So a lot of times when clients are at this level, they say that they want to put stuff out there, but they're afraid of being judged, right? They're being afraid of being too much. They're being afraid of being in the spotlight. And what we see is that we are beings that value belonging. And by nature, we want to resonate with the people around us. So you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. But if you have outgrown the people that you're spending time with, there may be an energetic, unconscious, right, agenda to lower your receiving to still fit in with your peers. And here comes being able to like hold space, love the crap out of them, right? But to rise, whether they are choosing it or not. Okay. So some of the signs that you may be stuck at this income level, right, beyond the financials of 5 to 10K months, it's undercharging or over delivering, right? So it's like those client projects that never seem to end, right? Or things where you've gotten into an agreement with something and they like run with it and it turns into something way beyond the scope of the course, right? Living paycheck to paycheck despite good income, that would indicate that there's some sort of glass ceiling or upper limit, right? Something that tells you it's not safe to actually sit and hold the money without spending it, giving away, or using it on things, even like manifesting expenses. Guilt when receiving without hard work. This was huge for me. I valued being a hard worker. I valued being a woman in business. I valued being the one who was like going to bend over backwards to like kick ass. And that was part of my upbringing. My mom was a very hard worker. My dad's a very hard worker, right? Both had a huge work ethic. So I remember at this phase when my body, my higher consciousness, right, my higher self was guiding me to say, hey, it's not actually about doing more or pushing harder or adding another 10 hours to your week. It's actually about using some of that money to invite more ease, right, to start buying back my time or to delegate things that I actually didn't want to do anymore. And to allow myself to have more flow states, right, feel more supported without it having to be so freaking hard. And that's counterintuitive. So cords and contracts at this level may be loyalty vows to stay, to match your family, your spouse at their income level, right? Don't exceed those unspoken rules, right? Or if your family had very strong beliefs around like the rich, the wealthy, right? Wanting to stay a good person, meaning you have to be broke or modest, right? And a lot of times I notice this too when parents that I'm hanging out with at like playgrounds and stuff when my kids are playing, they'll like make these jokes of like how broke they are. And I'm just like, wow, that's so interesting. You know, like I don't want to joke about that. There also may be peer level agreements. So don't surpass us, right? Don't outshine us or don't charge more than somebody you've trained under. And that was big for me too, right? Coming in, having trained with amazing, very incredible mentors, healers, coaches. When I decided to put my prices and I got the nudge to raise my rates and I decided I wanted to go premium, there was these things of how dare I, they've been in business way longer than me. I learned from them, they're charging this, but we're not on the same path. And maybe they also weren't like a premium service provider. They had a different pricing model or niche, which is totally okay. The other thing you might see at the 5 to 10K level is like a witch wound or past life persecution for shining too bright, sharing your gifts, or challenging the system, right? Especially if you are like a conscious entrepreneur, you may have some wounding around being taken out, right? Or being too outspoken when challenging certain norms. And that can look like taking yourself out, afraid of being too visible, right? Or staying really small behind the scenes so that you're not too bold, loud, and proud because there's a part of you that says, well, what's going to happen? So some of the things that you can do here is reprogramming that it's safe to have more than enough, right? Dissolving vows of under-earning, raising your rates without wobbling, and learning to actually train your nervous system to say the new price, to hold it, to visualize it coming in before it happens so that by the time you get a prospect or a lead in front of you, you're not unconsciously projecting your own scarcity stuff onto them because they may or may not have a totally different threshold of tolerance on how much they want to pay, right? So when we assume just because we have these things coming up that they think the same way, we're doing us and them a disservice because we're projecting things that we don't even know to be true about them, right? So again, boundaries with the scope of the work. And then also allowing yourself to choose 1 or 2 small things to start delegating, getting rid of things you actually don't want to do to create more ease, because the higher up you go, the more ease you have. And when we look at Oprah and Richard Branson and these people who are like billionaires at the top, how do they spend their day? Not working hard. They delegate the majority of it and they are lasered in for their zone of genius for like short micro bursts and sprints. But for the rest, it's like maximum life enjoyment, right? I know you don't need to be a billionaire to start doing that, but we do need to start training your subconscious and yourself to normalize that because that accelerates the quantum leap into your next income threshold. Next is stage 3. So this is going from comfort, right? I've got a pretty good lifestyle into overflow. And this is something that I went through this summer. So this is the transition from 10 to 25K months. And now that you're comfortable, can you actually hold more without blowing it, hiding it, collapsing it, right? Or derailing it now that it's happened? So the test from the universe is seeing that you'll hit a record month, a sudden dry spell, right? Or unexpected expenses, or feeling a wave of judgment about being too successful and worrying that it's going to run out, right? When I hit my first 25K month, I celebrated that immediately after feeling the proudness and the accomplishment in a short amount of time. I jumped to, oh my God, what if I can't do that again? What if it all runs out? What if now that I've told my bookkeeper that this is how much I make and I don't make the next month, he's going to think I'm a fraud, right? So understanding that because this is beyond what you've normalized, your mind is automatically going to go to worrying that it's not sustainable. And the test here is also, how do you create systems and do the unsexy behind the scenes work, right? To make sure that you can stabilize that rather than just seeing it as a fluke. So that's where a little bit of that like roll up your sleeves and conscious action is required. So what you need to release at this level are, let me just see here. What you need to release at this level is actually around expanding your tolerance for good, right? Normalizing that, and then also making the conscious choice to set boundaries with your business to not always be on. During one of my highest months this summer, we went on an amazing family vacation, took a road trip down to PEI. I was with my fiance, my daughter. We had the best time. I could not shut off from work from the life of me. And every day I felt so guilty because we were on the road, right? And then we were listening to ebooks and chatting. And then I would go start typing notes in my phone about new ideas I had. And oh my God, what if my clients like aren't going to be able to deal with me for the next 2 weeks, right? They're going to like flop without me. What if the next launch isn't going to take off because now I'm on vacation? How dare I rest after this great month? Like this feeling like you need to keep it up by jumping into more work is very, very common at this thing. The other is when you don't feel safe holding without distributing the money again, you can manifest either expensive business mistakes, or you might feel like there's so much money coming in that you're just throwing money at problems rather than actually becoming the person that figures out how to deal with them, right? So I was like, oh yeah, that's fine. I'll just delegate to this and I'll delegate to that and I'll get this person to fix it. But I didn't even understand how to fix the problem. I didn't even learn that myself. I was just deflecting my responsibility by like hiring someone to do it for me under this misconception that I should just stay in my zone of genius, right? The intuitive business owner. And I actually had to let that identity go to become like the responsible, badass, thriving business owner who does look at the finances, who does look at the back end automations, who does look at the, the KPIs and the sales metrics, because it was no longer around just being that, but actually starting to hold an empire and take full responsibility, start to finish, for my financial reports, the cash flow, the sales, the close rate, right? All of the things that previously I was like, no, that's not me. That's just, I'm the intuitive. I don't have to do that. I can just throw money at it. So I learned that very quick. But stabilizing overflow is actually around systems, right? And for the first time ever, I also hired like a GHL, so go high level engineers who are wonderful, who help build the back end automations and to create a predictable customer journey, right? So when people came in from lead magnet to discovery call to, there was a pipeline in place. It wasn't up to guesswork. It wasn't up to, praying and manifesting that they would close. But actually, how can I make it so freaking easy for people to work with me at every stage of their journey and to find me and to get nurtured and to build trust? And so that those things, those systems now could run so that I could take time off if I wanted to. I could go with my family to travel, right? So overflow requires some of the most unsexy, like let's look up look under the hood of your car. And also, how do you hold it and just be okay holding it? And one of the standards I set for myself at this level was I now value so much having cash flow reserves on hand to make sure that if there is a dry month, a low month, whatever down the future, I'm not sweating if I can pay myself or not. And I would rather have it in my account and just hold it because that feels really good to my nervous system. And that's a way of me as a very feminine woman honoring my masculine needs for being provided for, right? Even if the money is coming from me in my business, still honoring that feeling of provided for, right? Okay, so beyond that, we've got overflow into legacy. So here is actually about becoming a steward, right? So no longer wearing all the hats, no longer doing everything, but actually becoming a leader of a movement that people want to get behind, right? So you are here to be the high-level visionary. You're not here to put out fires. Can you hold more influence, more money, more responsibility, more leadership without collapse, without guilt, right? Without taking yourself out or without numbing? Some of the tests from the universe is feeling like you're going to be criticized, betrayed, or tested, right? A lot of the times I've actually seen some fears of like lawsuits and stuff. Like, I'm getting too big. What if I just get like smacked with a lawsuit? Even if you're not doing anything wrong, it's a very interesting psychic attack that happens. And also contracts, again, to never surpass certain mentors, right? Or ancestral stories, deep-rooted ancestral stories that punish those who thrive. So any of the vows of secrecy or silence here can really come into effect. But what's being asked to reprogrammed at this level is amplifying your impact without burning yourself out or being everyone for everything, right? So how can you steward this movement, delegate, and almost like be the voice or the forerunner of something that people want to get behind without you having to do it all? Okay. So signs you might be keeping yourself stuck at the legacy level, right? Is having really great months and then sabotaging with numbing, right? Alcohol, celebrations, other coping mechanisms because it's such a big weight on your shoulders. Spending all your income after a very high cash month. So unnecessary purchases, throwing money at problems, expensive mistakes, impulse investments, right? Hiring way too many people. And then the business wasn't ready to actually hold it all. Believing that income equals hours worked, right? Delaying invoices after massive wins, like fearing like, okay, I just closed that deal and now I'm afraid to like send the thing. And again, this fear of corruption or lawsuits or what we call big money problems, right? Big money problems. People have heard that, more money, more problems. It's a very interesting thing that keeps people playing small. Understanding that if you're hitting these new records, right, and you're getting into like exponential wealth, legacy level wealth, that sometimes the subconscious can believe that this is where people get, right, smacked with a lawsuit, something happens, or people go after, and again, this can be like a persecution wound or imprint from ancestors or past lives, that you will be persecuted or people go after like their share of your pie, right? That's a very interesting money program. So some of the things to release at that level are holding the overflow without spending and throwing things in, right? Can you actually hold it without throwing them there? Taking an honest look at the fear of lawsuits and big money problems, like, are those beliefs actually yours? Did they get inherited, right? Where are they coming from? Any of those vows or programmings that make you believe money corrupts purity, right? So at some level, there's like that possibility for corruption or hijacking. I certainly had that when I went to start like channeling in public. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be like a target, right? Because now I'm going to do this publicly. And then soon, you know, what if I'm like overtaken, or what if I can't hold it in integrity? Seeing some of those people who are like spiritual channels that get hijacked, right? Or derailed from their public facing mission. So some of the tests to pass, right, again, is questioning those beliefs, right? Holding the income without spending them, and then acting as your future self. So at any of these thresholds, right, 0 to 100K plus, are you making decisions from the version of you that has that next income level? So right now, as I'm stabilizing 20K months and aiming towards, say, 40K months, I am making decisions as that version of me, not me. And maybe I don't know how to do everything, but my future self does. My future self already did it. My future self by nature has accomplished it. So what I do is I say, okay, if I am becoming this version of me with this goal, would I say yes to this? Would this opportunity get me closer? Would they be available for that? Right? Would that create more cash flow, more opportunities for me? And if I'm faced with like a potential investment decision, I'm making it from the future version of myself, not myself now. And then clearing any beliefs that say it's not safe to from this standpoint. Okay. So markers that you passed is paying yourself generously before the business and anyone else, which again sounds counterintuitive and quote unquote selfish, but you owe it to your nervous system that you will always be provided for by giving it to yourself. And realistically, your subcontractors, your business, your clients, your suppliers cannot be paid if you didn't exist running the business in the first place. So you, I don't want to say need, because we're not about rules here, but it is strongly advised from so many different mentors, financial experts, to pay yourself first and to have that be the one thing that is predictable, because entrepreneurship comes with a whole lot of uncertainty that we're willing to tolerate beyond a 9-to-5. Okay. So investing as your future self, implementing systems to stabilize, right? Being the person who runs the movement rather than holds every part of the responsibility. With frameworks like Back Your Time Martell is a great one, right? To implement systems, to delegate effectively so that people aren't constantly coming back to you, to double check everything, to be super dependent on getting their questions asked or answered. Okay. There is the legacy to like infinite wealth threshold. I don't feel called to go in detail to that. We can go into it briefly. This is the 100K a month plus level. I'll go into it very briefly. So the number one thing at this level would actually be the recommitment to pursuing your joy and the original dream, right? So at this level, you've had a great amount of success. Congratulations, like that's a huge feat, that's a huge accomplishment. But what people might be struggling is that they have to maintain this level of success, and that it suddenly became all about the money. It suddenly became about something that they don't even recognize anymore. And that's where reigniting that initial fulfillment piece, going back to the original dream, the original thing your soul did, or the original vision you had for yourself in the world, and reigniting the joy is going to be the number one like test, right? Or thing to make sure you're in integrity and alignment. And that's where people a lot of times might come to me and they're like, look, like I've built it all. I have the accolades, I have all the accomplishments, but like I feel so empty inside, right? And if you feel empty inside, that means that there's a part of you that's craving creativity, play, joy, wonder, right? Excitement, or pursuing the things that maybe not be as profitable, knowing that that's part of your soul's genius and what you came here to experience and to share with people, right? So you may have a nagging feeling that everything might crumble with one wrong move, right? So these sort of worry things, requests to rescue others, feeling liable, responsible when people come to ask you for money, right? And having to reinforce certain healthy standards or boundaries for yourself that you're not a bank. That's what we see at the 100K a month plus level, right? Karmic guilt around using wealth or misusing wealth, rescuing vows that drain your surplus, right? So again, you're not responsible for your uncle who's like 20 years older than you just because you've quote unquote made it with love. But also not regressing into just focusing on the money only and making sure that your joy is woven into your business. Okay. So the signs at this level might be fear of losing it all, a joy ceiling, right? Money rises, but joy no longer does. The lack of fulfillment, chasing money, or getting so used to what's profitable rather than what you enjoy. And then pressure to rescue others financially or become a bank for anyone that asks. What you can reprogram at that level is the rise and fall patterns, right? We see that a lot in Rome and different things where there's a leader who comes into sudden power, right? We see this also in celebrities who come into sudden fame, and then there's the rise and fall. They have a scandal, right? That's also part of that upper limit problem where we manifest scandals and sabotage if we're not safe holding at that level. And there may also be misaligned shiny deals. So do you choose alignment and integrity? Do you keep your word, or do you go with what feels lucrative, right? Somebody might offer you something that looks really great on paper, that is flashy, but is it actually in integrity with your vision, right? Your standards, or is it just a shiny red dress? Okay. Those are the most common subconscious loops. I hope this was helpful. If you feel like you are personally resonating with one and you're like ready to let that shit go, you may or may not be an intuitive, you may or may not be a healer, but I invite you to reach out to me to let me know which ones resonated with. Like, where are you currently, right? What actions are you taking as a result? And if you want help with any of these and you know that you want to get there faster, you can request a discovery call with me and we'll personally tap into track and assess what are the holding patterns you're carrying and what does need to be released to give you a roadmap and a plan to hit your next level of income super freaking fast. Okay. My website is www.melissamarina.com. You can book a discovery call with me there or just DM me. Lots of love. Bye, guys.